Now let's get some more perspective on the broadcast by the President. And I'm being joined live from our Abuja studios by legal practitioner, Mr. Daniel Buhari. Good evening, Mr. Buhari, and thank you for joining us. Happy New Year.
Wish you the same. Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Now, the President talked about, amongst other things, he talked about reducing the cost of governance. And some people have asked the question, can he really be talking about reducing the cost of governance when he's just appointed, some say up to 100 chairmen and members of boards of federal parastatals, agencies and departments? How do you square this up?
Right. Well, thank you for having me. I think that if you want to reduce the cost of governance, to be honest, the best way is to restructure. And when you devolve powers to the state, then you have less power at the center and you have less responsibility at the center. But as long as we continue in this trajectory, I don't think it is possible for us to reduce the cost of governance. However, the opinion I've always had is that a board appointment is not equal to cabinet appointment, because all of the appointments regarding the boards are non-executive appointments. They are not going to actively be involved in economic development. But
they will get paid, wouldn't they?
Main crux of the matter.
They will get paid.
I'm surprised. Actually, I thought that in the news today. Go ahead.
They will get paid, wouldn't they? They will get paid. And since we're talking about cost of governance.
You know, but then you have to forgive him for that, because based on the economic recovery growth plan of the government, we're just getting out of recession, and it seems that the economy is bouncing back. And don't forget also that the president was accused by the opposition, and then rightfully so by some Nigerians, and over the last 2 to 3 years, he was not able to appoint people into the various boards. And some of the agencies, ministries or departments of the government have not been able to function effectively and optimally because the boards were not constituted. So you cannot blame him for that. I don't think there is a problem with the appointment of people into the board. What I look forward to seeing is the president rejigging the cabinet. A lot of ministers are redundant, they are ineffective, and some of the ministers are also overwhelmed in their ministries. Then what happens to the issue of decompression of some of the ministries? He talked about power and he talked about transport. These are 2 ministries, these are 6, actually 8 ministries subsumed into 2. And he promised that he is going to decompress it, thereby giving it opportunity for effective people who are probably technocrats to handle this responsibility. Some of the ministers are overwhelmed, some are redundant, very few of them are effective. And even in football match, to be honest, after halftime, you have to re-strategize. You change players. The whole idea is that you are re-strategizing in order to win. We are getting to the 75 minutes of the match. This is the 3rd year. And 2018 is actually a year that every government will be in her best behavior. So nothing should be, we are not expecting anything less than the rejigging of the cabinet in the shortest period of time. And some of the projects that you know was evidenced in his speech today, we hope that Fiscal Responsibility Commission, EFCC and other relevant agencies of the government will stand on their toes to ensure that the project of the government is duly executed. We don't go back to the issue of corruption again.
Now, earlier, you did allude to the issue of what you would like to see being restructuring. What the president said on that was that he didn't see the actual need for restructuring. What he saw was that there was a need for improvement of the process, as opposed to what advocates of restructuring talk about, which is the whole structure itself needing to be rejigged. How do you react to that?
With the greatest respect to the president, in my opinion, I do not think the president quite appreciates the concept of restructuring. Probably the president assumes that restructuring means balkanizing the nation. But restructuring is much more than that. And we've had a wider conversation across board. It is time for us to start talking about it. Maybe what the president ought to have done would have been to give it the opportunity for us to start the conversation. Definitely, we are going to arrive at a point when it will be obvious to everyone that the government at the center is bloated and there is need for powers to be devolved to the state and to the local government so as to see efficiency. The truth of the matter is that the system of government we are running now, we've been doing that over time, and it is not effective. We are progressing, but it is not effective. So the president's comment must have been premised on the understanding that restructuring is calling for the, probably separation of the government or, balkanizing the nation. But that is actually not the case. If you permit me, there is one important thing I want to mention today. Late last year, the Federal Executive Council approved the reconstruction of Gombe-Biu Road because there is an army university that is proposed to be established there. You have access to power plant as well as access to agricultural products along that axis. In the speech of the president today, there is no mention of that project. So what we don't know is whether that has now been abandoned, even though last year it was unanimously agreed by the Federal Executive Council to undertake that project.
All right, then. I'd like to thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Buhari. Thank you so much for joining us from our studios in Abuja.